going on with Nova? So I know you said you're looking to possibly do boarding in the future.
We would, no, that's it. We would love to do that. She's 9. No, that's it. She's like bad shit. She just does everything at level 800.
Typical,
So,
yeah.
Tips for that, we'll take them.
Typical dobe.
Typical dobe.
Yeah.
And I mean, other than that, like, she's not that bad. Her heel position is terrible.
Sure.
On a walk, she thinks it's like here, and I'm like, no, it's here, and she's like, but I think it's here, and it's just like we're talking the whole time.
Sure.
That's kind of miserable.
Okay. And did you do a board and train with Scott?
We did, yeah.
Okay,
we did the
cool.
2 week with him.
How long ago?
Almost exactly a year.
Okay, cool.
9.
And how did she do with it? Pretty good?
Good, she loved it. And
Cool.
She was like,
Yeah.
the best thing in the world for her. She's like, getting trained 5 times a day? Perfect.
Yeah.
She was so happy.
Totally.
Which makes sense. Also
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Biggest thing here as far as the boarding is concerned, so 99% of Scott's clients are more than fine as far as boarding here. We just like to kind of familiarize ourselves with where the individual dog, as far as kind of where their training is at and stuff like that. The biggest thing that I'm going to be looking for is just how she responds to the commands. We'll talk a little bit about her sociability with other dogs, other people, stuff like that. And then we could take a look at some of the commands and just kind of see, if there are some areas that, you could use a little bit of extra coaching with. We could help you with some of those types of things. Again, his program is similar enough to ours where, it's a pretty seamless transition with things. Like most of the commands and everything are exactly the same, and honestly any big differences between our programs have much less to do with the end product and they just have more to do with like the in-between, so like biggest thing is we use a lot of food in our training, a lot of reward-based stuff. He's very not into using the food, I know, which is fine. Everybody's got kind of their own way of doing things.
She doesn't really care about food.
Yep.
She's like a whore for that. Like, she will just like creep out of place.
Yeah.
Put her chin on us. Like, give me love. That's
sure.
Weird.
And so biggest things would be obviously that. Some of the obedience in itself, just opinions on, like my lifestyle that I live with my dogs, for example. It's not like they're obviously they'll hold down stays, hold bed commands, do all this kind of stuff when we need them to. But I'm much less interested in, I always say, like micromanaging my dog all the time, right? So like for example, right now, I ain't got no problem. That saves me sweeping up later, So things like this, it's one of those things where, frankly, I don't even care if she's in a down state right now. If she wants to explore around and stuff like that, I'm cool with it.
I think it's helping her chill out.
Sure.
She can be really like,
yep.
Does that make sense? Or do you think I'm crazy? Is it
No, I don't think you're crazy at all. But this is kind of where, like the opinion on things. So let me ask you this. Let's say she wasn't in a down state right now.
So this, I would be like,
yep. Well, real quick, before we worry about that, let's say she's not in the down state right now. When you say putting her in the down helps her chill out, obviously, what sorts of things would you be concerned that she would be doing when she gets excited?
I hear nothing
Sure.
in my house, stealing my kid's toy, jumping up on the couch to stare at her and bark, running to the basement for dirty socks.
Sure.
Like, she has all of those tendencies.
And do you find yourself using the obedience commands and stuff in the house to try to stop her from doing those things?
Girl lives on plates. Is that bad? Is that
No. Again, so there's no issue with that. And this is where, again, the biggest difference is in philosophy. When you get into obedience commands, my opinions on obedience commands are they're absolutely 100% necessary, and we train everything to the same standard as far as how reliable the dogs will be with those types of things. But ultimately, my goal is to micromanage them as little as possible, meaning all of those individual issues you started describing, stealing the toys, getting socks, creeping around in the basement for stuff that she shouldn't have, all those things, I would be focusing on more clearly stopping those first, and then using my obedience commands to manage things where the dog might not necessarily be doing anything incorrect, but I just need to get them out of the way. So for example, guests coming over, right? My dogs aren't going to, my dogs aren't going to jump on my guests when they come in the house, but, with the holidays and stuff, we have people coming in with gifts, food, this, that, where they don't need 4 dogs running around under their feet at all times,
Totally.
I will tell you, like 90% of dogs that come in here, that floor vent right there, for whatever reason, they're just freaking terrified of. It's hilarious. So I spent a lot of time working on addressing those things first and foremost. Because here's the thing, the commands will work, right? It obviously stops her from doing them, right? But long term, it does nothing to tell her what's actually expected of her.
Right, and when we don't put her in place for whatever reason, we forget whatever's happening. She's in the freaking basement.
Exactly, right? So it's the behavior that you actually don't want her to do is contingent on you micromanaging her from doing that thing, right?
Which still feels like a step above from where we were before.
Of course, and it 100% is, right?
But I see what you're saying.
That's kind of where you get into the like differences and stuff like that. The biggest differences are just those kind of things, you know, getting into, you know, actually getting into the root of those problems. And here's the thing, right? Let's say a dog leaves.
Trying to talk me through some of that, like.
Oh yeah. We'll get into it. Yeah.
Care about this half the time. She's like, I don't give a fuck.
You want to know why? You're at a level 22 right now.
Which is high or low?
Low for this setting. So again, we'll get into. We'll talk about some of this kind of stuff. Where was I going right before you said that?
Managing your real behaviors. And
Managing real behaviors, obviously. God, there was something I was getting ready to say like a second ago. I lost it. That's okay. We'll get back to it. So yes, we'll get into to addressing some of those. Oh yeah. So let's say dogs leave our board and train program, right? We still coach the same types of things initially, right? I'm still going to get into showing you like, listen, like if you're having all of these problems, like let's say you had a list of like 6 different issues, right? There's still going to be some management initially, right? And you're going to have to use some of your downstays, some of your place commands, some of all this kind of stuff in order to manage her in the meantime. But we provide quite a bit of follow-ups for our post-board and train. We're usually like a month later, a month and a half later, stuff like that. As we're doing those follow-up sessions, we show you then how to fade those things out, right? To that point, right? So we'll get right into. Yeah, so you know, and here's the thing. The cool thing about like once we get like dogs and stuff into our boarding program and everything, you know, these types of conversations and everything, as you kind of familiarize yourself with how we do the things we do, and you kind of stay up to date on some of like our social media stuff we post and everything, you'll get a lot of like little tips and tricks that once your dog is already trained, you could apply that stuff, right? Like there's a lot of people we work with, and I'll do like virtual training and stuff with that have done similar board. Get all excited, that have done similar types of board and train programs like elsewhere, like in different states and stuff, that we could help with that fine tuning from there. I can't necessarily train your dog virtually from afar, but I can help you take it to the next level kind of thing, you know. I'm gonna have you work it a couple of times, and all I wanna do is see how she does with you with it without me giving any different corrections aside from, were you just tapping when you said 9?
Oh, with 9, yeah.
Okay,
and
perfect.
That's stupid because her name is Nova, and some guy at work was like, she won't know no, and I was like, okay.
Is that why you switched to that? That was gonna be my next question.
So, and Scott was like, that was dumb, you don't have to do that.
You don't have to do that, yeah. We literally had somebody, what the hell was their dog's name? We had somebody come in, this was like a year or so ago, that had a dog that had a similar name to No, right?
Okay.
And they literally, 2 sessions in, changed their dog's name because they were scared. It was so funny.
Had the dog?
They didn't have the dog that long, so it was okay. But they still had the dog for like long enough where it was like you're changing your dog's name to accommodate the no marker. I thought that was the funniest thing in the world. So what I want you to do is walk up to that bed and try to get her into place.
Okay, Nova, place. 9. Nova, place. Is this a trick? Is this a trick?
Nope.
9. Nova, place.
Little resistance. Okay.
Nova, place.
She sure is scared of that vent over there. All right, let's do this. Why don't you try this one?
Okay.
See if there's anything different on that one.
Nova, place.
That's hilarious. And
Down.
okay. And do you?
Would normally offer the down.
Yep. And I want you to have her hold it.
Okay.
And you can leave her there. Go ahead and walk away. Walk around the room for a minute. Yep.
Nova, place. 9. No, please.
We'll just do this for one more minute, and then we'll kind of talk about that. She's like, all right. Where'd you get her from?
Amish.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that bad? They seemed very.
I mean, it's not great.
When we said that to Scott, he was like,
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing, right? So, like, I'm not saying they're not, like, nice people at times, because I'm sure that they are, you know?
they seemed very.
But the ethics of how they're breeding is what the issue is, you know? There's no, there's no responsibility as far as producing a high quality of dog, right? And if you look at good, reputable breeders, it's not that, I'm not anti-breeder by any means, right? You want to get a certain type of dog, you go to a certain type of breeder for that, right? But, when you look at good breeders, their number one goal is not to sell puppies and make money. Their number one goal is to, yes, is to essentially enhance on the integrity of the breed. You know what I mean? And create a nice, stable dog, you know? So they do a lot of things as far as checking hip certifications, hip and elbow certifications. They'll go back lineages, like 4 lineages back, and make sure that all of them were good. The second they get a dog that comes out that has some sort of serious like genetic defect or major genetic behavioral issue or something like that, they'll just stop breeding that dog altogether. Behavior is one that's a little bit more gray. It's mostly off of like physical genetic traits and stuff. But if you start noticing that you're producing a litter where like half of the litter is really skittish, anxious dogs, you know, that is a sign then that that probably is a genetic trait, you know.
Does she? What read do you get on her? Does she give you skittish?
Hard to say initially. Yeah, it's hard to say initially, you know. She seems relatively stable, you know. I mean, she doesn't seem like, I mean, obviously she's scared of the bed over there, which I would say a lot of dogs are, but like coming in here and stuff, she didn't seem overly concerned. She seemed curious, so no, I'm not seeing anything that's bad. All right, why don't you go ahead and grab the leash, and then you can release her. And then you can just let her hang out again.
9. No, but please. There's a lot of like anticipating.
Yeah. In most of this, and I don't say this obviously to blame you, but a lot of this is handling tweaks, right? So let's do this. Let me take the leash from you here, and I'm gonna try a couple of those, and I wanna see what we get here. So first thing, yes, I would say that level is very low, right? Level on the e-collar, right? Every time you said 9 and I hit that button, I couldn't tell at all that she was feeling that e-collar, right? And I'm not saying she probably is feeling something, but there's a big difference between perception level and motivation level, right? So what I mean by that, I'm sure in your send home lesson, what you guys likely did, because I think I've seen Scott do this in some of his videos, there's a lot of continuous pressure work, teaching getting onto the bed, teaching getting into position, and teaching like that off switch with the e-collar, right? So when you're doing that type of work, that would be using the e-collar as what we refer to as negative reinforcement. You're using a perception level for that, right? We're not intending for it to be extremely motivating to the dog. We're just intending for them to feel that sensation and start to connect the dots that this is what turns it off, right? You get into long-term with things. Let's say we're trying to stop her from jumping. Let's say we're trying to inhibit her picking up socks on the ground. Let's say we ask her to come and she's too distracted by something going on over behind the door, whatever it may be. I'm not going to use a perception level for that, because here's the thing. Just because she feels it doesn't mean she cares about it, right?
Totally. And she doesn't.
Exactly, right? So at this stage in the training, when we're taking commands that we're saying, you know, she knows these things at this point. She's been taught thoroughly with them. She understands clearly what they mean. We have to, at that point, switch to a motivation level. And motivation is funny because it's one of those things where what I see most owners fall into the trap of is they'll find a level that works for 75% of things. Like I'm sure in no distractions in the house, when you're just, you know, trying to get around the place so you could vacuum or something like that, that your 25 is more than enough, right? I'm sure she cares enough about it. She stays there. It's not a big deal, right? So we get it glued in our head that that's just the number.
And there's no, right, there's no.
Exactly, right? And we know that's not the case because in our house is much different than being in a kennel where there's barking dogs all over the place and there's people upstairs, there's people downstairs. When you're at the park and there's a deer or a squirrel or this or that, right? I've seen dogs that work at a 6 for their general training in a room, but then go out on an off-leash hike, and when they see deer and stuff like that, work at like a 90, you know? I mean, it can change so dramatically, right?
I don't know why we're so afraid. Like, Scott told us this
Yeah.
stuff. He was like, don't go too low, too slow,
Yes.
all this shit. Number one mistake, and we still.
And this is not a just you thing. This is not a just Scott thing. This is not a just anybody thing. This is issues we see post board and train with clients almost 100% of the time as well. Because listen, I mean, here's the thing, right? Like, I'm sure before you ever did any training or knew anything, the thought of like shock collars, right? It's a little like, it's off-put, right? It's like, I don't want to hurt my dog, right? And here's the thing, the goal is not to hurt our dog, obviously, right? The goal is to use as little pressure as we can get away with, but as much as we need to. So at the same time, I also don't want to fall into this trap of like, okay, cool, we'll just use it at a 90 all the time. You know what I mean? Because that wouldn't be fair to the dog either, right? So the approach I have always taken when I work with dogs is I do literally every single time I give a correction for something, a very quick like mental assessment of did she care too much, too little, or just right. So I'll kind of show you how that works here. So I'm gonna start working her here. Place, give that place command. Good. Once she gets in position, I'm gonna have her hold it, and I don't care about the down on it right now, right? Right now we're isolating our command. So let's say how you were doing it where you do place, then down. The thing is, once you've engaged that down, you're no longer working on place. You're just working on a down stay at that point. So right now I'm just isolating these commands. I wanna make sure place looks really good by itself, and I wanna make sure down looks really good by itself. And then later on, once those things look really good, then we'll kind of sandwich them back together as we need to. Right? Okay. That's another thing I see all the time is we get really hung up then on the down on place.
And it's not quite.
And it's not quite, you know, that both of them are kind of sloppy. You know, they kind of sloppily get on the place and then sloppily get into the down, you know? So right now I'm just gonna worry about place, you know? Because here's the thing, if she holds place perfectly, does it really matter if she lays down on it? No, and if she's holding it perfectly, she's probably gonna lay down anyways, right? So what I'm gonna be doing here is as I'm working with her, if I need to correct for anything, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna give a tap, I'm gonna ask myself, could I tell that she was motivated by that level? If not, I'm just gonna go up a little bit. And typically when I'm doing this, I don't even look at the remote, I just give it a little turn, you know? A little bit of a turn. And typically I'm going like 5 to 10, somewhere around there higher, right? Now you'll also, place. So right there, I'm gonna go up a little bit. Didn't see that much of a response. She probably felt it a little bit.
I feel like that physical, because sometimes we hear her and she's like, and I'm like, oh, was that too much?
It depends, right? Every dog, it's a little different. Some dogs, yeah, like we're looking for the actual twitch of the muscle, you know, because it obviously works like a muscle stimulator. For other dogs, I'm just kind of looking for them to be like, okay, wait, what am I supposed to do, you know? Every dog responds a little different to it.
Okay.
And do you use just okay for your release?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, so as far as some of the anticipation stuff that you're seeing here, place.
I'll let you be a marriage
No.
therapist for a minute.
Place. Again, gonna go up a little bit more there.
See, I think, wait, let me pause here.
Yeah, sure.
I think I get into this, honestly, I find it very overwhelming. I think I get into this place where I'm like, I just gotta get her into place.
Yep.
I almost stop looking at her.
Yep.
I almost stop, does that make sense?
Yeah, you get distracted as much as she does.
Yeah.
Which is normal. Again, it's easy. It's easy in a room like this to be like, okay, I could focus in on what I'm doing. But when there's 9,000 other things going on, your attention is just as distracted as hers is. You know. So this is where you get into some of these handling tweaks. Anticipation. One of the number one causes for anticipation that I see here is people do this. They go, okay, right. Let me show you what I do. Let me show you. Place. So what they do is they pick up the leash and they say okay at the same time, right? Let me show you what I do here. Every time I release a dog, if I have a leash on them, I go back, pick up my leash, pause, make sure I still have stability, okay, then I release. That way I confirm she's not cueing off of me picking this up, or she's not cueing off of my physical gestures, she's actually waiting for that release, right? There's something in dog training called overshadowing. Come here. Overshadowing basically means when two things are happening at the same time, the dog will only perceive the more dominant of the two. right? So me picking up a leash and saying okay at the same time, dogs are more visual creatures, right? So they're just gonna be cueing off. They're just watching me, they're not listening to me, right?
Did you
Place.
see when she came over to me, she gave me a gentle mouth graze?
I did not see that.
Loves to put her teeth on me. She hasn't
Yeah.
bit me in a year, but she doesn't do testing.
Sure.
I don't know how concerning that is.
Yep. I mean, has she, so getting to her sociability, has she ever had issues with people?
She used to bite me when she was a puppy. Like,
And when you say bite, do you mean out of aggression or just out of being a psycho puppy?
a psycho puppy.
Okay,
She was like,
I understand.
Oh my God,
Yeah, yeah.
why?
So that is not something I would be concerned about. If she starts committedly, not aggressively, but like committedly like putting her full mouth on you, I would correct for it, obviously. And that's where you get into, you gotta correct at a motivating enough level, right? So again, just working on breaking this anticipation, going back, no. Place. Still going up from there. We're at about a 45 right now. Okay. And a lot of times, once you do a session of this, place where you really confirm every time you do it, they're waiting for that release, you'll typically see that go away, like very quickly. Other things that I was noticing you do here, when you were giving your command, you're giving your command from really far away, right? Yes. So a lot of them you would do this, right? So you'd go place, and then you'd walk her all the way across to that place. I noticed you do that a couple of times here. Not every time, but a couple of them, right? Okay. I always, when I'm working on, we call it bed, place, same command, right? When I'm working on our bed command, I always say if you're gonna work on it on an object that you've never worked on it before, get yourself within a 3 to 4 foot radius of it before you give that command, right?
Okay.
So everything comes down to setting the dog up for a nice clear picture to give that command, right? So when I walk up to it, I'm gonna wait till I'm near it. Place, once I give that place command, I stabilize myself. I give the dog an opportunity to do it. If they don't do it, no. Place. I mark with no, give our correction, 9 obviously in your case. And then repeat the place command. And that time, that was the first time I noticed a good response out of her. She felt the correction, I noticed a little bit of a twitch, nothing too extreme. She cared about it, she fixed herself. So we're gonna keep it at that for right now. That's a 46. Again, that may change after the next correction. Next correction, I may need to go up some more, I may need to go down a little bit. But each time I use it, I'm making a little adjustment or asking myself if I need to. Okay, do one more on that bed here. Place. Very good. Sometimes with a lot of stuff, it's just, I always say, just like breathe, just take your time with it. You know, just try to focus in on what it is that you're doing and give the most clear information possible, you know. So what we're gonna do next here, okay, is I'm gonna do a couple on this bed because I know she doesn't wanna do it, and I'll show you how I would typically work through that if she gives us an issue with it. Place. So giving command, no. Place. So we're gonna go up a little bit more from there. No. Place. A little bit more. Giving her a second to work through this. She wants to do it. No. Place. Bless you. No. Place. There we go. Now you get into, a lot of people talk about, you know, fearful dogs, anxious dogs, use of the e-collar, stuff like that. I always say, the thing they're scared of, the thing they're anxious of, in this case, obviously the floor vent right here, you have to look at it as just a distraction. Even though she's having an emotionally charged response to it, of being nervous of it, she is still distracted by it because she's nervous of it, and that's why she's not being compliant with her command. So in that case, we went up to a 75 because that was the motivation level around a high level distraction, right? And that's what ultimately got her to fix that behavior and situate herself into that place, right? Okay, so we'll do that again. We'll see how she does this next one. Place. And that time, perfect response, right? Because we worked through it, we addressed the issue in a way that she cared about and understood, which caused her to then fix herself. But as you've seen, there's so much education that the person needs to know, right? And it's like, you know English, so you go anywhere that people speak English and you're gonna be able to have a conversation and understand each other. But if I throw you into a foreign country where they don't know how to speak your language, you're shit out of luck. You're just trying to kind of figure it out, and you might be able to get somewhere, but like it's not gonna be clear, And dog training is the same way, and that's why I've always, from when I started this company, I've always tried to familiarize myself with like how basically every other training company in the greater Cleveland area trains. That way when people come to us and they're like, hey, I'm having A issue, B issue, or C issue, I typically, before I even start working the dog, I'm able to kind of mentally have an idea of what the issue is,
Why do people end up with you?
What's that?
Why do people end up here with you?
Are you talking post-training?
Yeah. Like I would say I'm only
Sure.
here because of like boarding.
I understand.
Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. I mean, frankly, like we are very frequently a like second or third stop for people from the standpoint of they've worked with other trainers before, they still have issues, and we have kind of a track record of working through this kind of stuff, And I will say, like past, like I don't think we're so extraordinarily better trainers than anybody else from the standard of the actual training that's being done. Like training is pretty universal, I mean, really, like there's only so many ways that you could train a dog, right? But we put out more content than just about anybody. Like if you go on our YouTube channel, we have like literally, I think like 1,000 videos of like DIY this is how we do this, watch this second session here. I mean, that's why we're filming these videos, right? Is we put a lot of freaking content out there that people can see. Because obviously like training's not cheap, right? And when people are looking to make a really big financial investment in something, it's like they want to kind of know what they're, they want to really trust it, So we do it for that reason. And then I've just found in my experience in the industry, everywhere, like nationwide, the biggest issue is, trainers don't focus enough on follow-up support, in my opinion,
Yeah.
Exactly, right? Like it's, you could only expect post board and train or post one-on-ones or something like that. If you're only providing 1 or 2 follow-up sessions post board and train, like that's not enough time to learn all of these little details, So, our board and train programs include 12 months of follow-up sessions. We do 4 weeks as the smallest. Yeah. So we try to spend a lot more time with the dogs with certain things. And that's where, again, because we do a lot of like food drive building and, teaching in a little bit slightly different of a way, it's just a longer process. Gives the dog time to kind of work through things at their pace a little bit more. So, but that's the biggest reasons, I think, is we really try to do those things. And then with the daycare and the boarding that we add, it's kind of a one-stop shop for everybody, And that's our way of, when we have dogs come in for boarding or for daycare, like we have clients that we trained their dog 5 years ago, 6 years ago that still will come here for daycare, boarding and stuff. And they know, like when they pick up their dog, we'd be like, hey, we're noticing this or we're noticing this. And because we're the ones that train the dog, we could give them a solution right there, Yeah. Okay. All right, one more of this.
Not on a place is way weaker. Weaker, yeah.
Yes. Place command obviously is a very visual position to dogs, It's like they're on it or they're not on it kind of thing.
Yeah.
Where down is a little grayer,
So she loves like army crawl. She'll do a sideways roll and get like 6 feet going over her belly.
That just comes down to setting the expectation with it. And frankly, a lot of that comes down to having a motivating enough level for her not being compliant with the position. Listen, a little shifting and stuff I'm okay with. But yeah, you get some of these dogs, it's funny, like...
I mean, she'll go to like the other end of the room.
I was gonna say, like I've watched dogs before, you'll put them in a downstay there, and they'll literally army crawl with their elbows totally on the ground, 100% across the room.
Oh yeah.
So... Okay. Down. Yeah, most dogs have a very good understanding of getting into the position. It's really the holding position that's the hardest thing, because that's when they start really getting distracted. They have a little space cadet.
David, she is like, oh, this is so frustrating. She is like a different dog. She's so keyed into you. She's like waiting on your next move. She's like all obsessed with you. And for me, she's like, don't give a shit. Is it because you're using the e-collar wrong?
Yeah, I mean, she doesn't have as many associations with me, obviously, as far as like, all the fun and the playing and this and that. But yeah, I mean, we're, already worked her through a couple of big hurdles. You
That's
know,
true, actually.
like that sole rep of getting onto the bed right there where she really didn't want to do it, and I showed her like you have to do it, right? I worked her past that, immediately shifted in her head of like, wait, something is different with this guy. Yeah. So that's the thing is it's not that we're doing anything magical here, right? These are all things that you could accomplish as well, right? It's just a matter of committing to like when I give a command, I have to follow through and get her to do it, and I have to do it in the proper way, you know. And then things like, you know, you can tell as she holds the position for longer, she's getting a little bit more antsy, you know, so we'll keep watching it, knowing that we'll have her hold this position a little bit longer and see if she starts making any mistakes with it. Now, per duration work, stuff like this, one other big thing that I'll see a lot of people make the mistake of is, let's say she were to break it right now. Like I'm over here, she's over there, she gets up, she comes running over to me kind of thing. A lot of people will say no, and then they'll try to get the dog back into a down from like all the way over here. They'll be like, no down, no down, no down, right? Something like that.
Okay.
I would say once they make that mistake, when you're away from them, the reset is the most important part. So once she breaks this, what I would do is I would tell her no, give my correction for it. But then, once I've said no and corrected, it's like last rep was a wash, you know? Throw it out the window.
You're not rushing to like
No,
her back.
exactly. I am not in a rush to get her back into position. No. Prime example, right? So I told her no, gave my correction. Right now, I'm not even worried about getting her back into that position because I've already corrected for it. We're already done with that rep. Now, level-wise, I'm going to go down a little bit because that time it was a little higher than normal. And then I'm going to reset, right? So I'm going to get my leash. I'm going to take her as close back to that same spot as I can. Down. Then I'll reposition her back. Then we'll try again.
We absolutely make that mistake. We totally go into panic over that.
Yeah.
Ah, no.
Well then, you have a dog that's so hyperactive, and then you get into panic mode, and they get even more into panic mode, and then everything's a fucking mess.
Yes. Yes. And then she's like 100 miles an hour in my like
Exactly.
10-foot
Yeah. So that's a big one. You know, whether it's a bed, whether it's a down, take your time out. Give your correction. We have to give that right away, obviously. At that point, take your time getting them back into position.
Okay. Makes sense. That's actually really helpful. I think that's not that's actually really helpful. Of course it's helpful. I think we also feel that like, oh no, we're so distracted with our kid. We're not getting back to her fast enough. But this is reframing it as like, okay, that's okay. Give the correction.
Yep.
Figure out the kid, then fix it.
Exactly, right? Once you give your correction, I always say you terminated whatever you've been working on, right? So once she breaks that down and I correct her for it, we're no longer working on that down until we re-put her back into command. Cool. Obviously after that correction, a little bit more stable in that position now. It's not quite as antsy with it. Let's test this one, here we go. What was that?
What was that? Yeah, definitely someone at the door. It was months before she helped.
Okay. Yeah.
Reliably.
That's a big hurdle for people usually. Down. And then once you get it, it's like, man, this is the greatest thing in the world.
Yeah.
In with it, you can see it, right? But you don't have to like not look at it or keep your chin glued to the ground kind of thing, right? That's how they start to get over those things, where you can create so much more stress by implementing that double down in that situation,
That's very
right?
interesting. Okay. All right, girl, no more double down for you.
Yeah, that's a question I always put on my clients a lot is, again, what are you trying to stop with the obedience command, right? And with any of them, like I said, there are situations where we need to use them, obviously, where the dog isn't doing anything wrong. There's not really anything I'm trying to stop, right? But 99% of the time, usually when we're giving a command, we're trying to get the dog to not do something else. And I just constantly am encouraging, just stop that thing, right? Let's say, okay, you're free. Good job. Right? Let's say there was I don't know, whatever, something on the ground that we didn't want her to have, right? I'm not gonna say that food, right? That food was on the ground, and let's say it wasn't food, it was I don't know, a chicken bone, something she's not allowed to have, right? I'm not gonna keep her in a down over here to go not get that chicken bone. I'm just gonna correct her if she tries to get that chicken bone, right? And I'm gonna correct her just with no and a correction at a motivating enough level that makes her not grab that chicken bone. So I would encourage you with a lot of the socks and the miscellaneous things around the house, start trying to set them up a little bit. You know, if you know where her spots are, where she likes to get into stuff, kind of let her do it and just like
Be ready to
correct her when she goes for it. And knowing that she was working pretty high for this, again, don't get caught on the level.
Right.
But have it high enough where she cares about it. I was just going to ask you about that.
Demanding affection.
Here's the thing,
Because
right?
sometimes I'm like,
Yeah.
get off me, and sometimes I'm like, I love you.
Yeah. So here's the thing, right? Like my dogs will kind of demand attention. Is you know, like listen, this is where I have the empathy to. We get dogs to enjoy some of these things, right? I'm not so extreme where it's like everything's like military, this, that. You know what I mean? But there are boundaries to some of it. So where I started seeing her like paw at you a little bit and stuff a second ago, those are things I would be giving corrections for, right?
So she cannot paw at me. You think that's a fine boundary though?
The pawing?
Yeah.
Yeah. If she paws at you, I would correct for it, right?
Okay.
Like right there, tell her no.
No.
Perfect. And then go ahead and stop petting her, and let's see what she does. And then I also need to know if I stop petting her and she tries to push me for more and I still don't pet her for it, then she'll back off at that point.
Gotcha.
Those are kind of my boundaries with it.
I'm honestly surprised she didn't come back in for more.
And the reason for it is because she just got corrected for that pawing, so she realized there is a boundary, right? This is not like a free-for-all, I do whatever I want. And that correction was at an 87 for that. So this is where I'm getting at level-wise, man. It's gonna be all over the place with some
I
of this.
really need to get not scared of like 50 plus.
You know, and there's situations where that will be appropriate, but if you don't get caught on a number, you just get caught on go up or down in increments of 5 to 10 based on how she's responding to it, you'll always be good. You will constantly be not undercorrecting and not overcorrecting.
One thing that I'm afraid of is that like she'll need 100 all the time and then I'm out of numbers.
No,
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does make
But
sense.
it's, like, not gonna
At
happen.
that point, if you run into situations where she's so consistently blowing off 100, you have other issues. You know,
Okay.
at that point, the issue is not the e-collar. Yeah, the issue is like you're probably doing something wrong. You know, because here's the thing: motivation is only one side of the equation, right? Clarity is the other side of it. Because here's the thing: we could be correcting at 100 all day long for
If we're sloppy,
A, B, C, or D, right? But yeah, let's say the bed command. Let's say we were correcting at the wrong time when she broke the bed command, but we were doing it at 100. She's never gonna figure it out, right? But on the contrary, we could have the best timing in the world, but if we're too low, she's also not gonna figure it out, right? So clarity and motivation go hand in hand with some of this kind of stuff. Okay, let's do this. What we're gonna do next is we're just gonna take her outside in the parking lot. I just wanna take a look at the walking just real quick,
It's gonna be so bad.
and then we'll kind of go from
It's
there.
gonna be so bad, no
You have any questions on this so far?
No, this is really great. It's like great information.
I mean, we're kind of crash coursing this. Alright, let's go take her outside. Let's see what we get. Now, we're not gonna get too crazy with like doorway mirrors and stuff right now. Just more so walking.
What is that? Like a little, haha, I'm not pulling the leash, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, halts. My Malinois does that.
You have a Malinois?
Yeah. So like when he gets
My
really
husband
jacked up,
wanted a
he'll start
Malinois.
spinning. Don't get one.
Thank God we did not get
Yeah,
one.
don't get
I
one.
know that already. Yeah.
All right. So here's what we're gonna do. So number one mistake that I see people make when it comes to the walking with the leash and stuff is they try to use the leash too much to micromanage, right? They're doing too much this and not enough this, right? So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna have you walk on my right hand side here. I'm gonna tell her heel. We're gonna start walking, and I'm gonna stay as loose on this leash as I can. And if she gets out of position to the point where I feel like I need to put on that leash, I'm just gonna give my correction. And as far as you were saying, you know, heel position, right? Obviously, her technical sake here is further ahead than a lot of people would consider to be a good heel position. I don't want you to worry as much about that. I don't get really nitpicky with physical position. I get really nitpicky with attention. Because I think that when you look at leash walking in general, attention is what you really care about.
Well, can I tell you why I think I do care about position? Because it's often me, her, stroller.
Yep.
And my kid's like, dog,
Yeah.
dog. So I do want her not in. Does that make sense?
I understand, right? And I'm not saying that as far as like let her get 9,000 feet ahead of you, right? But what I'm saying is
I don't need to be like a mountain
you don't have to be so strict about it where it creates an unrealistic expectation.
Okay,
Right?
okay.
So again, going back to my Malinois, for example, right?
But, like, this already looks good, to be
Yeah,
honest.
and
Okay.
this is good. I have no problem with this, right?
Okay.
But again, a lot of people would consider this to be too far ahead.
Okay.
You know,
okay.
and this is where I mean she's paying attention to me to the point where she's not, you know,
She's giving you a little
she's
pause,
giving me the
little-
attention,
Yeah.
right? You know, she's not pulling on the leash.
No.
It's not like she's going from here to here to here to here to here, right? She's maintaining this perfectly, right? Which is good. And that's where, again, so my Malinois, right? I've had him now for almost 9 years, and he is the dog that forever, for years, I tried to tighten his heel position up of like, get him to be further back, get him to be further back. He is like a level 15 out of 10, like jacked up, right? That's just his energy all the time. That's who he is, right? Perfectly well behaved, right? He listens to all his commands and everything. He'll do everything exactly when I need him to, but he does it with like 120% energy.
Okay.
You know? And because I would nag him so much trying to get him to get further back on that
guys
walk,
just
further
were
back
like,
on that walk. Yeah, it was just like nobody had fun on the walks.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
And as soon as I as soon as I loosen that boundary up just a little bit, as far as instead of being like right here,
You need to be
I
more
allowed like this. This is kind of how he feels right
Okay,
now.
okay.
I started allowing this. I realized that he did it perfectly because that was like his organic cadence that he wanted to follow, and suddenly our walks were amazing. You know?
Yeah.
But I loosened the boundary and I got way more firm on enforcing that more loose boundary. Right?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so that was dumb. I just went instead of
We don't
correcting
use
her. We don't do that. Right.
If she's not in position, we use no for that. So I want you to bring her in, and I want you to just put her into a down over there.
Okay, no big deal.
Yep, somewhere over there. Perfect. Drop your leash. And then I want you walking her over here. And again, if she gets up, you'll correct her. Then just take time walking her all the way back. Looks great. I mean, just a couple little tweaks, you know? Couple little tweaks and big difference.
Like, is it possible I'll just need to come see you every 6 months? Or do people do that, or is that like...
So not every 6 months. I mean, we'll have people like a year or so, you know, come in for a brush up.
Okay.
But a lot of this stuff comes down to, I want to get you the information and have you deeply understand it so you don't have to do that, right? Because here's the thing, it's normal. I'm going to allow that right now. Wait for, again, a little bit more deliberate of a mistake before you correct for it. If she crawled all the way over to her, that'd be a different story. Right there. Coming up. Now go walk all the way back to her. And even though she's in that down already, once you get back to her, tell her down again. Yes.
Or just leave her.
Just tell her down.
No, that's down.
Perfect. Because she's in roughly the same spot as when you originally put her there, but we still have to reset because, like I said, when you say no and correct, you ended whatever you were. Now, I'm not going to say down from over here because she knows the picture of us being next to her giving that command. So if you say it from over here, you run the risk of her thinking, wait, come?
Do I
need to get up and come over there?
Should I never have the expectation that I can, like, send her into place from across the room?
That's not what I'm saying.
That's not right, but for now.
That's more advanced, right? We're focused on the fundamentals right now, and you got to get these things down really, really good before you worry about that stuff, right? Because you'll find that once you get these things down really, really good, a lot of that stuff comes on its own.
It's not
You know,
on my-
like the going to place from afar, right? Like I'll send my dogs from across the place. Like, they understand that, but it's because at home it's always on the same bed every single time, and it's always in the same room every single time, right? So it's an easy pattern that they start to understand. In here, we do them down here, we do them up there, we do them in the hallway. We have another facility across the parking lot that we do them in. You know, it's just like there's too many different variables where we can't do that. That's why I say when you go somewhere new, you can't make that your expectation. You have to have that expectation when you're near the thing. Exactly, right? So you gotta focus on those fundamentals and get those really good with this. I don't remember what I was saying, but that's okay. Yeah, so again, the idea here right now is just focus on holding her to a higher standard. 90% of your issue right now is your level. You need to start making sure that's much higher. And then I would really encourage you to start actually stopping the behavioral issues that you're trying to manage her with the commands to do so.
Right. And this is my stopper, or is there
Yes.
some other
No,
magic?
that's,
This is my stopper.
there's no magic here.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
so Yeah, it's just no with a correction. If she's not in command and she does anything you don't want her to do, it's just no, tap. That's it.